I used to cry. But now, even breathing a little slower than normal triggers a system warning. Michael Chen, 42, stands motionless at the edge of a memorial transition ceremony. His mother's holographic image hovers above a sleek white platform, surrounded by precisely arranged white lilies. The other attendees, 15 people in total, maintain perfect postures and pleasant, neutral expressions. No one weeps. No one speaks of loss. The ceremony is designed to honor life contribution rather than acknowledge death. Michael's augmented reality glasses display his mother's life statistics: birth date, education achievements, productivity metrics, community contribution score. Nowhere does it mention that she taught him to play piano, or that she secretly loved thunderstorms, or that her laugh could fill a room. A notification blinks in the corner of his AR display. Mild emotional dysregulation detected, 8%. Stabilization recommended. Michael takes a deep breath, forcing his facial muscles to relax into the socially acceptable expression of calm appreciation. His neural implant sends a gentle pulse of stabilizing compounds into his bloodstream without requiring his consent. Within seconds, the hollow ache in his chest begins to subside, replaced by a manufactured tranquility. The ceremony concludes with the standard unity affirmation. Life continues in collective memory. Harmony persists through transition. Michael joins in the communal response, his voice indistinguishable from the others. We acknowledge contribution. We maintain stability. As he turns to leave, he catches a glimpse of his reflection in the memorial hall's glass wall. His face is the perfect mask of emotional balance that society demands. But behind his AR glasses, his eyes tell a different story. One that hasn't been programmed out of existence. Not yet. The city of New Serenity stretches out beneath Michael's apartment window, a marvel of post-emotional equilibrium architecture. Every building, every street, every park has been designed according to neurological optimization principles. Colors are calibrated to promote cognitive stability. Acoustic dampeners eliminate jarring sounds. Even the air is laced with subtle mood-regulating compounds. Citizens move through this carefully engineered environment with the fluid efficiency of perfectly balanced emotional states. Each person wears a mandatory neurosync device on their temple, a small elegant disc that continuously monitors brain activity, skin conductivity, blood chemistry, and a dozen other biological markers of emotional states. The data streams directly to the Central Emotional Regulation Authority, CERA, where AI systems analyze millions of emotional patterns every second. The official CERA mission statement appears on public screens throughout the city. Humanity's greatest achievement, the end of unnecessary suffering. In a primary education center, children sit in circles as an instructor guides them through the daily emotional clarity exercise. Who can explain what people once called sadness? The instructor asks. A small girl raises her hand. Negative self-perception disorder. A neurochemical imbalance that caused irrational behavior and reduced productivity. Excellent, Citizen Junior Liu. And why don't we need to experience this disorder anymore? Because the world is safe now, the children respond in practiced unison. Emotional equilibrium protects us from unnecessary neural distress. In a nearby medical facility, though they're now called neural guidance centers, a team of specialists monitors citizens whose neurosync devices have flagged potential emotional irregularities. The treatment rooms are bright and comfortable, designed to feel welcoming rather than clinical. Patients aren't restrained. They don't need to be. The social conditioning against emotional deviation is so powerful that citizens voluntarily submit to compassionate neural redirection. Citizen Davis is showing elevated activity in the limbic region associated with former grief responses, a specialist notes, reviewing brain scans on a holographic display, likely triggered by the 5th anniversary of his child's transition. Schedule him for deep memory recalibration, her supervisor responds. Pattern suggests this is becoming a recursive emotional loop. Let's adjust the associated memory clusters to reduce attachment intensity. The specialists never use terms like sadness or grief. The official terminology refers only to self-perception disorder types 1 to 7, or negative cognitive recursion. The language of emotion has been systematically medicalized, stripping it of its human dimension. The historical exhibits at the Museum of Human Progress explain how society reached this point. After decades of increasing mental health crises, global conflicts, and environmental disasters, The Emotional Equilibrium Initiative of 2085 promised a revolutionary solution: targeted neural modification to eliminate the capacity for prolonged negative emotional states, particularly grief and despair. The exhibits highlight the overwhelming success of the program. Productivity increased 78%, social conflict decreased 92%. Suicide, now called premature self-termination, was virtually eliminated. What the exhibits don't mention is what was lost in the process: the depth of human experience, the connection between joy and sorrow, the meaning that emerges from contrast. Instead, humanity now exists in a state of perpetual, moderate contentment. Never too happy, never too sad, just stable, just productive, just functional. Michael Chen wasn't always an anomaly in the system. Once, he was integral to it, a senior programmer for neurosync technology, developing the very algorithms that now monitor his emotional deviations. His work focused on creating more sensitive detection patterns for emerging negative emotional cascades, allowing the system to intervene before citizens even became consciously aware of their emotional dysregulation. Then Anna happened. Anna Chen, brilliant research neurologist, his wife of 7 years, and eventually, classification. Persistent emotional recalibration failure. Michael keeps a small wooden box hidden in a wall compartment behind his bathroom mirror. A serious violation that would result in immediate intensive neural redirection if discovered. Inside the box, a paper photograph of Anna, physical photographs having been phased out as emotionally triggering objects. A handwritten note, and a simple titanium ring. Since Anna's comprehensive neural realignment 2 years ago, the procedure that essentially erased her identity when standard emotional regulation protocols failed, Michael has lived in a state of carefully concealed grief. While outwardly complying with social expectations, he has systematically disengaged from his former career, requesting assignment to a remote data analysis position that minimizes human contact. Each night, after confirming his apartment's privacy shields are active, officially for sleep optimization, Michael sits by his window and listens to a piece of instrumental music that would be flagged as potentially destabilizing if detected by the content monitoring systems. The music, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, creates a physical sensation in his chest that the system would immediately classify as emotional dysregulation. Michael calls it something else, something from old books: heartache. The most dangerous aspect of his condition is the dreams. Despite undergoing the mandatory memory adjustment procedure after Anna's comprehensive realignment, Michael still dreams of her eyes, dark and expressive, communicating something his waking mind can't remember. These dreams should be impossible. The neural pathways associated with those specific memories were precisely targeted and recalibrated. Yet night after night, some fragment of Anna returns to him, a neurological ghost that should not exist. Recently, his neurosync device has begun registering these unconscious emotional fluctuations during REM sleep. Each morning, his AR glasses display increasingly urgent stabilization recommendations. Unexplained emotional variability detected during sleep cycle. Recommend voluntary consultation with neural guidance specialist. Michael knows what voluntary consultation means. Once inside a neural guidance center, citizens rarely emerge with their full memory structures intact. Still, he maintains his external compliance, careful to regulate his breathing, maintain appropriate facial expressions, and engage in expected social behaviors. He masks his grief like an addict hides a dependency, with meticulous attention to detail and constant vigilance. But the system is designed to detect precisely these patterns of concealment. It's only a matter of time before the algorithm recognizes the discrepancy between his outward behavior and his internal neural activity. And time is running out. The knock at his door comes on a Tuesday afternoon. Michael opens it to find a young woman in the distinctive beige uniform of Sierra Technical Services. "Citizen Chen, I'm Technician Lin. Your neurosync device has been flagging potential calibration issues. I'm here to perform diagnostic maintenance." Michael maintains his carefully neutral expression. "Of course. Please come in." Technician Lin is young, perhaps 25, with the clear eyes and smooth movements of someone who has never known true grief or anxiety. She belongs to the first generation born after the Emotional Equilibrium Initiative, never having experienced the full range of human emotion. She scans his neurosync device with a specialized tool, frowning slightly at the readings. "Your emotional patterns don't align with standard programmed spectrums," she says, reviewing the data on her tablet. "We're seeing fluctuations that don't correspond to any recognized emotional state. Michael forces a slight smile. Perhaps the device is malfunctioning? Possible. Though these patterns are consistent with... She hesitates, then continues with clinical detachment. With memory retention issues. Are you experiencing recurring thoughts about past relationships or transitions? The question is a trap. If he acknowledges remembering Anna, remembering his grief, it will trigger immediate intervention protocols. No unusual thought patterns, he replies with practiced ease. My productivity metrics remain within acceptable parameters. Technician Lin nods, but her eyes linger on him with something that in an earlier era might have been called concern. I'll recalibrate your device, she says. But if these patterns continue, the system will automatically schedule a deep neural scan. It's for your well-being, Citizen Chen. No one should have to experience dysregulation. Of course, Michael agrees. Stability benefits all. After she leaves, Michael sits motionless, staring at the blank wall of his living room. Inside, a complex mixture of emotions churns: fear, grief, a desperate longing, and something else, something sharper and clearer, the realization that his time of hiding is nearly over. That night, he retrieves his wooden box and carefully unfolds Anna's handwritten note, an artifact so rare it would be immediately confiscated if discovered. Her handwriting, once as familiar to him as his own heartbeat, now seems like a message from another world. Remember us when they try to make you forget. Some things are worth the pain. As he traces her writing with his fingertip, Michael allows himself to fully remember their last argument, the one before she was reported for persistent emotional instability. They had disagreed about having children in a world where emotional range was systematically suppressed. Anna had advocated for quiet resistance. Michael had argued for pragmatic acceptance. When she began to cry, he had become uncomfortable, unsure how to respond to such an open display of emotion. He had reminded her to regulate her response, to consider using her emergency stabilization injection. "This is real, Michael," she had said, tears streaming down her face. "This is human. Don't you see what they're taking from us?" He hadn't understood then. He had been a perfect citizen, believing in the system, in the collective good of emotional equilibrium. Now, alone in his apartment, Michael finally allows himself to feel the full weight of his loss, not just of Anna, but of everything she represented. He makes no attempt to regulate his breathing, to control his facial expressions, to suppress the physical manifestations of his grief. For the first time since Anna was taken, he weeps openly, his body shaking with the release of emotions long denied. His neurosync device immediately registers the extreme deviation, flashing urgent warnings across his AR display. Severe emotional dysregulation detected. Emergency stabilization protocols initiated. Citizen number 448, VH, scheduled for immediate transfer to Deep Emotional Stabilization Center. Through his tears, Michael watches as the system dispatches neural compliance officers to his location. He has perhaps 10 minutes before they arrive. He doesn't run. There is nowhere to go in a world where every neurosync device functions as a tracking beacon, where every public space contains emotional monitoring sensors, where citizens are conditioned to report any sign of emotional irregularity. Instead, he sits quietly, Anna's note clutched in his hand, waiting for the end of his grief, and with it, the end of his last connection to the woman he loved. The Neural Guidance Center is designed to feel peaceful. Soft lighting, gentle ambient sounds, natural materials. It bears no resemblance to the psychiatric facilities of the past. There are no restraints, no locked doors. They aren't needed. Social conditioning has created a population that views emotional dysregulation as a form of illness, requiring immediate treatment. Michael sits on a comfortable chair as a neural guidance specialist explains the procedure with practiced compassion. We've identified the memory clusters causing your dysregulation, Citizen Chen. The neural remapping will specifically target these areas, maintaining your core functionality while eliminating the recursive emotional patterns causing your distress. On a holographic display, Michael can see his own brain scan, with certain areas highlighted in red, the physical locations of his memories of Anna, of his grief, of his love. Before we begin, the specialist continues, would you like a moment of reflection? Many citizens find it helpful to consciously release attachment to dysregulation-inducing memories. This final moment of reflection is the system's one concession to humanity, a brief opportunity to say goodbye to the parts of oneself about to be erased. It's framed as therapeutic closure, but Michael recognizes it for what it really is, the last gasp of human autonomy before the algorithm takes over. The neural guidance nurse, a young woman with gentle hands and carefully modulated speech, prepares the injection that will begin the neural remapping process. Michael notices a slight tremor in her fingers, a tiny imperfection in her emotional regulation. "If I forget her," Michael says quietly, "the pain will disappear, but she'll disappear too. Has anyone ever truly lived if no one feels pain when they're gone?" The nurse hesitates, her hand stilling above the injection site. Something flickers across her face. Confusion, perhaps, or the shadow of an emotion she's never been permitted to fully experience. "The procedure is for your benefit, Citizen Chen," she responds, but her voice lacks the usual certainty. "Negative emotional recursion serves no evolutionary purpose." "Doesn't it?" Michael asks. "Or is grief the price we pay for love? The evidence that something mattered?" The nurse doesn't respond, but for a moment, just a moment, their eyes meet in mutual recognition of something the system has tried to eliminate: genuine human connection. Then she administers the injection, and the neural remapping begins. Michael feels the cool spread of chemicals through his system, the slight buzzing sensation as the nanofacilitators cross the blood-brain barrier and begin targeting specific neural pathways. On the monitors surrounding him, his brain activity displays in real time, areas lighting up and then dimming as the system identifies and begins to reconfigure his memories. Suddenly, an alert sounds. The neural guidance specialist frowns at the display. "We're encountering an anomaly," he says, his voice betraying rare uncertainty. "The emotional pattern isn't localized as expected." The specialist adjusts parameters, attempting to isolate the target memories, but the system continues to flag errors. Warning: unable to precisely locate grief-associated neural pattern. Network extends throughout entire nervous system. The specialist turns to his supervisor, professional composure slightly fractured. The emotional pattern has integrated with his foundational neural architecture. It's not contained in discrete memory clusters as the model predicts. "Impossible," the supervisor responds. "Emotional states are localized by definition." "Not this one," the specialist says, displaying a complete neural map that shows Michael's grief isn't contained in specific regions. It has become integrated throughout his entire neural network, inseparable from his core identity. "His grief has become a fundamental part of his neural architecture," the specialist explains. "We can't remove it without essentially erasing his entire personality structure." The supervisor makes a decision. Classify as persistent deviation case. Transfer to isolation housing for further study. This anomaly requires documentation. Michael, semi-conscious through this exchange, understands what this means. He will not be cured. Instead, he will become a research subject. One of the rare individuals whose emotional patterns resist standardization. He will be quarantined from society, prevented from contaminating others with his deviant emotional patterns. In his fading awareness, as the sedatives take full effect, Michael feels something unexpected: relief. They cannot take Anna from him. They cannot erase his grief because it has become him, woven into the very fabric of his consciousness. Some forms of love, it seems, are too profound for even the most advanced algorithms to untangle from the human heart. 6 months later, Michael lives in the Persistent Deviation Research Center, a comfortable but isolated facility where those who resist emotional standardization are housed and studied. His days follow a rigid schedule of cognitive assessments, neural scans, and strictly monitored social interactions with other deviants. The researchers are particularly interested in how his emotional patterns continue to resist normalization despite regular treatment. In their reports, they refer to his condition as integrated grief anomaly, a phenomenon where grief has become so thoroughly incorporated into neural architecture that it cannot be isolated and removed. Michael's room is simple but comfortable: white walls, minimal furniture, a single window overlooking a carefully maintained garden. He spends hours each day sitting by this window, watching the changing light, finding patterns in the movement of leaves and clouds. On Thursdays, he receives his weekly health evaluation from a rotating staff of neural guidance nurses. Today, a young nurse he hasn't seen before enters his room. Her name badge identifies her as Nurse Liu. Something about her eyes catches his attention: a curiosity, an alertness that seems unusual in system-compliant citizens. She performs the standard assessments professionally, but without the practiced detachment of most medical staff. When she measures his pulse, Her touch lingers a fraction of a second too long. "You seem very peaceful for someone classified as emotionally deviant," she observes as she records his vital signs. Michael studies her face, seeing something there that reminds him of Anna. Not in her features, but in a certain quality of presence that has become rare. "Sadness isn't a disease," he says simply. "It's evidence that we once loved." The words hang in the air between them. According to protocol, she should immediately report this philosophically deviant statement. Instead, she remains still, her eyes fixed on his. A single tear forms and slides down her cheek. She touches it with her fingertip, looking at the moisture with genuine confusion, experiencing perhaps for the first time an emotion she has been conditioned to suppress since childhood. "I don't understand," she whispers, her voice trembling slightly. "Why am I—" She doesn't finish the question. She doesn't have the vocabulary for what she's experiencing. The system has never given her the words. Michael doesn't explain. He simply watches as she experiences this small awakening, this first crack in the perfect emotional equilibrium the system has maintained throughout her life. When she leaves, her hands are steady again, her face composed. But something has changed, something has begun. That night, in the Central Emotional Regulation Authority's massive data center, an anomalous pattern is flagged in Nurse Liu's neurosync data. Minor emotional dysregulation detected in citizen number 3229, JL. Unclassifiable emotional signature. Preliminary designation, pre-grief state. Monitoring protocols initiated. The system, designed to eliminate emotional suffering, cannot recognize what is happening. The reawakening of humanity's oldest and most profound emotional capacity. The ability to feel another's pain, to connect through shared vulnerability, to recognize the beauty in brokenness. It begins with a single tear, a moment of genuine connection. But like all true emotions, once awakened, it cannot be easily contained. In his quiet room, Michael watches the stars appear one by one in the night sky. For the first time in years, he feels something like hope. Not the manufactured optimism the system promotes, but something deeper and more genuine. Some things, it seems, cannot be programmed away. Some aspects of humanity persist, waiting in the shadows of consciousness for the moment when they can reemerge. Grief may be an anomaly in this carefully balanced world, but perhaps anomalies are exactly what humanity needs to find its way back to itself.